Hi everybody, it's Terry. Welcome back to the workshop. It is the middle of winter here in Buffalo, so that means that I've got a few different projects down in my workbench, and it also means that a lot of those projects have something to do with snow. And that is definitely the case with this guy. This is the Tyco Terrain Twister, and it is a toy-grade RC gadget, meaning that it's probably something that you would buy at Toys R Us or Walmart rather than a hobby shop. Now, this particular model is out of production now, but you can still find new and used ones on eBay and Amazon and other online places. Now, I wasn't really quite sure what to think at first, because if you look at online reviews, some people really like these and think they're a lot of fun, and some people just despise them and want to set them on fire. But when I saw this one on eBay for $5, I just had to grab it and find out for myself. Now, you guys know that I like really unique RC vehicles, so what caught my attention about the Terrain Twister is what makes it go. Rather than wheels or tank treads, the Terrain Twister has pontoons on the bottom, and these pontoons spin. Now, the pontoons also have threads on them, so as they spin, the threads grab the ground and make it go forward, or backwards, or side to sides. You get the idea. Now, on hard surfaces, it doesn't work very well because there's nothing really for the threads to grab onto, but on softer surfaces like grass, dirt, mud, and snow, this system is ideal. The example that I bought on eBay included the vehicle itself and also the transmitter, or controller, whatever you want to call it. What it did not include is the proprietary 6-cell nickel metal hydride battery. And that was really fine with me because most of the time the batteries that are included with these toy grade products are not very good at all. So I was likely going to upgrade the battery anyway. Now, the other item that my example did not come with is the 5-hour charger. And that was also okay with me because ain't nobody got time for that. When I received the Terrain Twister, I didn't really have a clear idea of how much I wanted to modify it. My plan was to get it running with the fewest modifications possible, evaluate how it performed, and then map out any future modifications from there. So that meant, at a minimum, finding a way to fit one of my batteries into the existing battery compartment. That was actually pretty easy. The stock system uses 2 metal contacts in the battery compartment that mate with contacts on the stock battery when it's installed. So all I had to do was solder wires to those exposed contacts in the vehicle, and then on the other end of those wires, I attached a battery connector that mates with the batteries that I already have. So once that was done, I went through my battery stash and found several batteries that would fit in here with no problem. And the one I ended up choosing is a 2-cell lithium polymer battery with a 700 milliamp hour capacity. So you may be curious why I chose a 2-cell lithium polymer battery, and the answer is really simple. The stock battery, which is a 6-cell nickel metal hydride, when it's fully charged, the voltage is about 8.4. That's also the fully charged voltage of a 2-cell LiPo. So with this new battery, the input voltage going to the vehicle was going to be exactly the same. Now, the only difference between those two batteries that could have any impact on performance is that this battery is several ounces lighter. I did make one more change before test driving the Terrain Twister. The transmitter is supposed to use a 9-volt alkaline battery, but in my experience, most devices that use 9 volts work just fine on 2-cell LiPos, even though the voltage is just a little bit lower. So just like I did in the vehicle, I took the battery contacts and soldered wires to them with a hybrid grade connector on the end. And then I found another 2-cell LiPo, connected up, and the battery doesn't fit in the battery compartment here, so I just used Velcro on the back and it works fine. My next step was to test drive the Terrain Twister. And on my first day of testing, we had a nice coating of dense snow on the ground. And I have to tell you, this thing performed really well. I was surprised. It scooted right across the snow. It was fairly fast. It was maneuverable. It could climb hills. Basically, it did everything you could possibly ask of a toy-grade vehicle. In fact, I would say it's the most impressive toy-grade RC machine I've ever had. So I think for most people, the box stock Terrain Twister would satisfy them just fine. That is, as long as they're using it in its intended element. If you want something to drive around on your driveway or on the street, this is not going to cut it for you. But if you want something in the backyard, in the grass or the snow, I mean, this is just a really neat machine to have. At the same time, I recognized that there was potential to make this even better. The shortcomings that I found were all in the control system. And I'll go over real quick how that works. Most of the driving is done with this left stick. Basically, you push it upwards and both pontoons spin at the same speed to make it go forward. Push down and it goes backwards. Top left will make it turn to the left. Top right makes it turn to the right. If you push it to the left, it will crab to the left. And the same thing, push it right, it will crab to the right. And then pushing downward has all the same effects, but in reverse. Now, that all works fine and it's pretty intuitive, but the issue I had is that the controls are not proportional. A motor is either off or it's at full speed. There's no in between. So when you push it forward, both motors go completely to full speed right away. So that makes the control response kind of herky-jerky and a little bit rough at times. And the other issue I had was with this toggle switch over here. It goes up or down to change the angle of the pontoons. I'll show you what I mean. Now, normally the pontoons are parallel to each other, but when you push that switch upwards, the fronts come closer together and the rears spread apart. You push it downward and the opposite happens. And the idea is when you're crabbing right or left, changing that angle will let you turn while you're crabbing. And what I found is that in the snow, A, I almost never used the crabbing function, and B, when I was crabbing, I didn't really need to turn. So it seemed like a lot of overhead to have that functionality that I never used. I decided that the only way to overcome the control limitations of the Terrain Twister was to trade out the stock radio equipment for hobby-grade gear. So that meant that I was going to have to ditch the stock transmitter and also rip out most of the electronics inside. But before I did that, I had one other thing that I wanted to try. I wanted to see if the vehicle could use this battery. This is a 3-cell, 850 milliamp hour LiPo battery. Now, going with a 3-cell ups the voltage from 8.4 to 12.6, and increasing the voltage should make the motors turn faster to give it more speed, but it's also going to make the whole system pull more current, and that could very easily fry the board inside. But since I was pulling the board out anyway, I had nothing to lose. During my testing with the 3-cell battery, the Terrain Twister was significantly faster and more powerful. And more importantly, the circuit board held together just fine. So does that mean that anybody can put a 3-cell in theirs and not have any problems? I don't know. It might work, it might not. But I think if you're willing to take the risk of frying the board inside, then you'll be happy with the performance results that you get. Once I had the 3-cell test out of my system, I was ready to begin the radio overhaul. And the first step in that is to remove the top of the body. Now there are screws that are easily visible on the bottom here to take that off, but there are also 4 screws on the top that took me a while to find because they were originally hidden under stickers. So make sure you look for those. With the top cover and the battery mount removed, you have access to all of the electronics inside, and I ended up removing almost all of it. And it ended up being a pretty large volume of stuff that weighed more than 6 ounces. Now all of that stuff was replaced by just 3 components that take up a lot less volume and weigh less than an ounce combined. In the middle here, you've got a Tactic TR624 receiver. Now, this is a 6-channel receiver, but I'm only using 2 channels in this application. Now, the other 2 components are 20 amp brush speed controls. One speed control is attached to the motor in the right pontoon and one to the motor in the left pontoon, so they can be controlled individually. I retained the gears that adjust the angles of the pontoons. Now, I did remove the motor that drives them because I don't need that functionality, but by leaving the gears in place, it keeps the pontoons aligned, and also if I ever want to make adjustments, I can just turn the gears by hand. But during normal usage, the gears don't turn on their own. On the control side, I'm now using a Tactic TTX650 transmitter, which is your basic 2-stick radio. The only difference is that I've modified the up and down motion on the left gimbal so that it is now self-centering. On most 2-stick radios, that axis controls the throttle and it stays where you put it, which is great for airplanes, but wasn't going to work so great here. Now the idea in this application is that I have the throttle for the right pontoon on this stick and the throttle for the left pontoon on this stick. So when you drive it kind of like you imagine driving a tank when you were a kid. Both sticks full forward to go straight ahead, or you use differential thrust to make turns. While the Terrain Twister was fun to drive with the stock radio system, I really like driving it now with the upgraded radio. I'm sure that there was some improvement just from losing a few ounces of weight, but the real difference comes from the fact that the new throttles are proportional, so it's no longer just on or off for the motor. So you have much more precise control over what the vehicle's doing, and that turns out to make it more maneuverable and actually easier to drive, I think. Sure, this overhaul takes a little bit of time and some fairly expensive equipment, but I definitely think it's worthwhile to do. So am I done modifying the Terrain Twister? Well, I'm not really sure yet. I've got another one on the way, and I'm planning to do the same radio modification that I did to this one, but I'm also planning to crack open these pontoons to see if there are any upgrades I can do to increase the power and to make this thing go even faster. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and be sure to check out the written review on this topic at tested.com.